The building in front of you is locally known as the Dutch House, and in early histories of the town has always been referred to as such, though its original origins are slightly more dubious. The Dutch, who began building their homes on the land surrounding Fort Casimir in 1651, had more than 100 buildings erected by 1658. Their initial structures were most likely of timber construction, but they soon turned to a different building material, bricks. The earliest indications of any building on this property date back to the early 1680s, when George Moore's log cabin was here. However, while local tradition dates this house back to the Dutch period, current research suggests that this current house is primarily of English construction. The life of this intriguing house is divided into different historical periods. It was originally built as a timber-framed house sometime between 1690 and 1710. This early house was of a one-room floor plan with an 8-foot open hearth along the north or current right wall. Throughout most of the 18th century, the Silsby family of artisans lived here. In the mid-18th century, the Dutch house received renovations that gave it the architectural look it maintains today. At this time, the house was also raised to allow for the excavation of a cellar, was wrapped in Flemish bond brick veneer, and a full second floor was added. With the addition of the adjoining Federal-style Carpenter house to the right, the Dutch house's chimney was moved to its current central location, and the original large kitchen fireplace was removed. In 1937, when the Delaware Society for the Preservation of Antiquities purchased the house, additional historical restoration work was done. It opened shortly afterward as a historic house museum. The assortment of objects in the house was a project of Mrs. Louise DuPont Crowninshield. Mrs. Crowninshield, who was sister to Henry Francis DuPont of Winterthur, was a founder of the National Trust for Historic Preservation and a very prominent early preservationist. It is important to note, however, that the furnishings provided by Mrs. Crowninshield may be more indicative of her historical vision for the Dutch house rather than of furnishings typical of a late 17th century Dutch home. In the 1950s, a colonial revival garden, conceived of by Homsey Architects of Wilmington, was designed to reflect the prevailing concepts of an early Anglo-Dutch garden. The garden began undergoing major changes in 2011 with the addition of a Dutch kitchen garden and a Delaware native garden. The building was deeded to the Newcastle Historical Society in 1946 and is another one of the museums that we operate.